let's transition to a matchup in the NFC as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield, they are traveling to Detroit to take on Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions. The Lions are favored by 7 points. It's a 1 o'clock kickoff in Detroit. The over-under for this matchup is 51.5. And these two teams matched up in the divisional round playoff game last year. The Lions beat the Buccaneers 31-23. In that game, Baker Mayfield, he went 26 of 41. He threw for 349 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Mike Evans had a sensational game, 8 receptions, 147 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. For the Lions, Jared Goff, he went 30 of 43. He threw for 287 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. And week 1, the Buccaneers, they beat the Commanders 37-20. And the Lions beat the Rams 26-20 in overtime. So, as I look at this matchup, Baker Mayfield versus Jared Goff, let's start off with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Last week, Baker Mayfield was balling for the Buccaneers, and he had my best week 1 performer achievement. My best week 1 performer achievement with the Baker Mayfield. He was balling last week. He went 24 of 30. He threw for 289 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, completing 80% of his passes. And the Buccaneers, they had over 350 yards of total offense. They had 112 rushing yards, 280 passing yards. I thought Mike Evans did a great job getting in the mix. He had 2 touchdown catches. Chris Godwin had 8 receptions for 83 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. But for me, the key watching that game against the Commanders last week, one of the keys for the Buccaneers was their ability to run the football. In the game, they had 112 rushing yards. And in the backfield, you got Rachaad White and you got Bucky Irvin. And Bucky Irvin had 9 carries for 62 rushing yards. White had 15 carries for 31 rushing yards. So, to me, offensive coordinator Liam Combs and Baker Mayfield, they need to put an emphasis on being able to run the football because we know they have elite pass catchers in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. But in order for the Buccaneers to contend in the NFC South and contend in the NFC, they're going to have to establish a running game with White and Irvin in the backfield. You can't rely on Baker Mayfield to drop back to pass 35, 40 times per game and expect to win football games. You got to be able to have a balanced attack and run the football with White and Irvin because that's going to open up the passing attack. If you can run the football with Irvin and White, teams got to bring 9, 10 in the box, and that creates one-on-one for Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So I thought against the Commanders, they did a great job establishing the run game. 112 rushing yards for the Buccaneers is impressive. Last year, they were bottom 10 in rushing yards per game. And it was pretty much the Baker Mayfield show. Baker Mayfield, I believe, he's not elite. And I don't even believe he's good. He's average. So you can't rely on Baker Mayfield to win games. He's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. He's not Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow. Okay, he's average. I don't even believe he's better than Jared Goff. And I like Baker Mayfield. Again, I think Baker Mayfield has done a great job pretty much revitalizing his career. Because so far, since he's been in Tampa, Baker Mayfield has played well. Last year, 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 4,044 passing yards. He completed 64% of his passes, led the Buccaneers to the divisional round of the playoffs where they lost to the Lions. But for me, I thought that was a great season for the Buccaneers. Getting to the divisional round of the playoffs with Baker Mayfield. Remember, Tom Brady retired. And so for the Buccaneers and their organization, they didn't know where they were going to go to have stability at the quarterback position. And I believe Baker Mayfield has provided the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with stability at the quarterback position. He's not great. He's not even good, but he's average. And if he can avoid making the mistakes and turning the ball over, this Buccaneers football team will contend not only in the NFC South, but in the NFC overall. So they got to be able to run the football. They got to be able to run the football. And I thought last week defensively, as a defense, they did a pretty good job containing Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels, the rookie out of LSU, was in his first career start in the NFL. And that Buccaneers defense, they are led by head coach Todd Bowles. And they held Jaden Daniels in check. They didn't even give up 200 passing yards last week to Jaden Daniels. I think Jaden Daniels had 88 rushing yards, but he only had 184 passing yards. And he's a rookie. And the Commanders, to me, they don't really have elite weapons. They got Zach Ertz at tight end. You got Eckler in the backfield now, but they don't really have elite pass catchers. I like Brian Robinson, their running back, and I like Eckler, who's a veteran in that locker room, but they don't really have elite pass catchers. I do like Terry McLaurin. That's it. But last week, the Buccaneers held him in check. McLaurin only had 2 receptions for 17 receiving yards. So they did a pretty good job containing that Commanders offense last week. No Commanders receiver had over 4 receptions for the game. So they did a pretty good job as a defense containing that Commanders offense. And on that defense, you still got Vita Vea up front, okay? You still got KJ Britt at linebacker. In your secondary, you still got Jamel Dean. You still got Jordan Whitehead. You still got Antoine Whitfield Jr. as well. So this isn't the Super Bowl caliber defense that the Buccaneers had a few years ago when they won the Super Bowl, but they're still a pretty solid defense. I wouldn't say they're elite or good. They are okay. They did lose Devin White. He's a member of the Philadelphia Eagles now, but they're still pretty good. Pretty good / okay. Now, let's talk about the Detroit Lions. Obviously, the Lions beat the Rams in overtime, 26-20, and they are led by head coach Dan Campbell and quarterback Jared Goff. Last year, Jared Goff, 30 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 4,575 passing yards. He completed 67% of his passes. I thought last week, the Detroit Lions, offensively, they did a great job involving Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams, he is the talented receiver out of Alabama. And remember, he came out of the draft a few years ago, and he hasn't really lived up to expectations so far in the NFL. But Sunday night in Detroit, Jameson Williams was balling. He had 5 receptions, 121 receiving yards, 1 touchdown, and I thought it was the best game that he's had in his career. Seriously. He was balling. And to me, if the Detroit Lions get quality production from Jameson Williams, it takes this Lions offense to another level. Because we all know they have an elite, and I do mean elite, rushing attack with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in the backfield. So because of those 2 running backs, you got to bring 8-9 in the box because you got to respect the Detroit Lions running game. You got to respect their running game. But if Jameson Williams can be a threat on the perimeter with Amon St. Brown, you can't bring 8-9 in the box. You got to respect Williams and Brown on the perimeter as receivers for the Lions. So it will open up the running game for the Lions as well. And it takes their offense to another level. They were already good because the strength of the Lions is their running game with Montgomery and Gibbs. And the Lions offensive line is a top 5 offensive line in the NFL. Make no mistake about it. The Detroit Lions have a top 5 offensive line in the NFL. At center, you got Frank Ragnow. Okay, at right guard, you got Kevin Zeiler. At right tackle, you got number 1 overall pick, Penei Sewell. Okay, at left tackle, you got Taylor Decker. You got Graham Glasgow as well. They have a top 5 offensive line in the NFL. And I believe that's a part of the reason why the Detroit Lions are contenders in the NFC is because of their offensive line. And I thought in that overtime game against the Rams, They pretty much lined up and said, it's me versus you. And they pushed the Rams all around the field in overtime. I think they ran like 7 plays, and all of their plays were running plays. All their plays in overtime were run plays. So they play smash mouth football, and their identity as a football team is the same identity that Dan Campbell, to me, has as a head coach. They resemble their head coach. They're tough. They're gritty. Okay, when you watch Detroit Lion games, it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty. They play physical football. They don't play a finesse brand of football. They play a physical brand of football. And so it's going to be important for this Buccaneers defense to at least contain the rushing attack from the Lions. You got to contain Gibbs and Montgomery in the backfield and force Jared Goff to beat you. I believe Jared Goff is a good quarterback. He's not elite. Okay, he's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not Lamar Jackson. He's not Joe Burrow or Josh Allen. But Jared Goff is a good quarterback who you can win with in the NFL. We've seen him get to a Super Bowl with Sean McVay in the LA Rams. So you can win with Jared Goff. So, but I think if you're the Buccaneers, defensive coordinator / head coach Todd Bowles, your emphasis has to be, let's stop the run and let's try and force Jared Goff to beat us. Now, last year in their game in the division round of playoffs, Goff had 2 touchdowns. He threw for close to 300 passing yards. He had 287 passing yards. So he played pretty good in the playoff game. But that's your only hope at being able to beat the Lions, is slow down that elite rushing attack with Montgomery and Gibbs. If you're the Buccaneers offensively, you want to be able to run the football with White and Irvin, and that will create opportunities for Mike Evans and Chris Godwin on the outside for the Buccaneers. That's going to be key for them. Defensively, stop the run. Offensively, be able to establish the running game with White and Irving. If you're the Detroit Lions, you want to contain Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. That has to be your key, because in the NFC South, the 2 most proven receivers are Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So you got to be able to contain Godwin and Evans if you want to slow down that Buccaneers offense. Get some pressure on Baker Mayfield. You know, as pass rushers, you got Aiden Hutchinson. Okay, you got I.L. McNeil, DJ Reader, who they brought in free agency from the Bengals. So you got some nice pass rushers who can rush the quarterback. In the secondary, they played better against the Rams in week 1. Still got some work to do, but I think they got better in the secondary. Tyron Arnold, Amik Robertson, Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch. Okay, so it's going to be a big-time game in Detroit. But with that being said, I'm rolling with the Detroit Lions to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Detroit in week 2. I'm going Lions 27, Buccaneers 24.